All right, we're going to be taking a look at some more separable differential equations. We're going to multiply by dx, and we're going to multiply by 2y on both sides. All right, now that it's separated, we can go ahead and do the integral on both sides. And we'll put our plus c over here on the right side. We do need to do the square root on both sides. And on the left side, we're going to get absolute value of y. We can get rid of these absolute values if we put a plus or minus in front. And we'll move the plus or minus over to the other side. And we have solved for y, but we still need to solve for our plus c. And we also need to choose between our plus and our minus. You notice when x is 0, the y is a positive number. Since this square root is a function, that square root function will always be positive. So we want to get positive 4, so we're going to choose the positive one over here. There we go, and we don't have to put the plus for positive, we can just leave it blank. We still need to use our point to solve for the plus c. So when x is 0, the y is 4. All right, so we'll continue solving this over here. All right, we're going to go ahead and square both sides. And then subtract 1 from both sides. And now we have our final answer. There we go. We'll go ahead and put it in a box. You do want to plug in your 0.04 just to make sure you didn't make any silly mistakes. And when we plug in 0, we do get 4, so everything looks good here. And there we go. We have the solution there at the bottom. Just in case I had a mistake, I always put the solution at the bottom there. And we are getting the same thing, so this one looks good. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next example. Okay, for this one, we're going to divide by y, and we're going to multiply by dx. There we go, and we'll go ahead and do the integral on both sides. The left side is going to give you ln, and then absolute value of y. Right side, we get x minus x squared, and we're going to go ahead and put the plus c on the right side. We've got to get rid of this ln, so we're going to do e to the left side equals e to the right side. E to the log base e is going to cancel, so that's just going to give us absolute value of y. I'm going to write the right side as e to the x minus x squared times e to the c, because this is ultimately just going to be a constant. Before I change it into a constant, I'm going to get rid of these absolute values here. All I have to do is put a plus or minus in front. There we go. And we can move that to the other side. And I'm actually going to put the plus or minus on the e to the c, because I can just call that entire thing an a constant a. There we go, and now we can plug in our point when x is 1, y is 10, and we can solve for our a. And of course, e to the 0 is just a 1, so I'm getting that a is 10, and now I can put my final answer. There we go, let's put a box around it. And of course, you want to plug in your point. When you plug in a 1, do you get 10? And the answer is yes. So it looks like I didn't make any silly mistakes. And again, I had the answer at the bottom of the page. I just grabbed it and brought it up here so we can compare it. And yes, it looks like I got the correct answer. Let's go ahead and move on to our next example. Okay, this example is going to be much different than the rest of them because this one has the second derivative involved. So there's a couple ways you could do this. You could just write this as y double prime. And so y prime would be just the integral of this, and that would give you a plus c. And you can solve for the plus c by using your point. We know that y prime of 0 is -2. That was one of the given pieces of information. So let's plug that in. We'll plug in a 0 for the x and a -2 for the y prime. There we go. It looks like c is -2. And we can do that one more time. We know that y is going to be the integral of y prime. And I would normally put plus c. I'm just going to go ahead and put plus d. I'm just going to use a different letter. You could also use c1 and c2 if you wanted to. But we're going to use the point 0,1 to solve for the d. Looks like d is equal to 1. There we go. That's our answer. We're going to go ahead and put a box around it. And there we go. You can see I can compare it with my answer key, and it does look like I got the same thing. All right, now let's look at the alternative way of solving it, which would be to separate the variables. I'm just going to leave the answer key up here. That's going to be our final answer. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a substitution here. My v is going to equal dy dx. Remember, that's kind of like y prime. And if I do that substitution here, I'm going to have dv dx is equal to x minus 5. And of course, I'm going to multiply both sides by dx. And now I'm ready to do my integral on both sides. On the left side, it's kind of like the integral of 1. So that's just going to give me a v. On the right side, I'm getting x squared over 2 minus 5x. And I'm going to go ahead and put the plus c on the right side. Remember, v was dy dx, so we can trade that right now. All right, we're going to have to solve for our plus c. I can use my point. Y prime of 0 is negative 2. I put a negative 2 for the y prime of 0, and I put a 0 for the x. So I'm getting that c is negative 2. I can plug the negative 2 right here. Then I'll do it again. I'm going to separate it by multiplying both sides by dx. Now I can do the integral on both sides. On the left side, it's kind of like the integral of 1 dy, so that's just going to give me a y. And on the right side, I'm going to get x to the third over 6 minus 5 halves x squared minus 2x plus another constant, but I'm going to call the constant d because I already called one of the constants c. We can use our point to solve for the d. Our point is 0, 1. And we're getting that d is equal to 1. So now we have our final answer. Again, you can look at the top. If we let our d equal 1, we're going to get this for our answer at the top up here. So you could solve it either way. You're going to get the same answer. And that's it for this one. Let's go ahead and look at our last example. All right, this one's also a little bit different than the other ones we've worked with before because it's not easy to separate right now. So I'm going to have to get this piece on the other side, and then I'm going to have to factor out an e to the y. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to add this to both sides. There we go. And then you might notice that we have an e to the y right here. We also have an e to the y right here. So we can factor that e to the y out. And we'll be left with 4 plus 3x inside here. We can rewrite this. Y prime is the same thing as dy dx. Now, normally our dy dx is on the other side. If you prefer, you can go ahead and switch sides, or you can just multiply both sides by dx and divide both sides by e to the y. There we go. And now I can go ahead and do the integral on both sides. Before I do this integral on the right side, I'm going to rewrite the e to the y that's on the bottom. If I move it up, it's going to be an e to the negative y on the top. Now we can do the integral on both sides. I'm going to put the plus c over here on the left side. Now this integral should use a u substitution, but this is pretty easy for some people. Some people can do it in their head without doing a u substitution. We do have this negative here that I need to get rid of. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 1. And I don't really like minus c. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to call this c1. That way I have minus c1 here, and minus c1 is just going to be a c. So I'll change that on the next step. I do need to get rid of this e right here. So I'm going to do ln of both sides. There we go. Now the ln of e is going to cancel. It's going to get negative y over here. And of course I want to get rid of this negative here, so I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 1. And now I'm done. I've solved for y. All I have to do now is solve for our plus c. So I'll use my point to solve for the plus c. My point is 0, 0. So when x is 0, y is 0. I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 1 to get rid of this negative. And I'm going to do e to the left side is equal to e to the right side. E to the log base e will cancel. And I'm just going to get that c is equal to 1. So I'm basically done. I just need to put a 1 right here for the c. I'm running out of room, so I'm just going to go ahead and erase this c, and then I'm going to put a 1 in its place. There we go. That's our final answer. Let's go ahead and put a box around it. This brings up a good point. If you're doing this question on a real AP test on a free response portion, Do not erase any of your work the way that I just did. I just erased my C and then I put a +1. I did that because I was running out of room on my paper. They'll definitely give you enough room on your paper to do it. So what you would do is you would just put your final answer here. You wouldn't go back and erase anything the way I just did. All right, and I just went and grabbed the answer key that I had at the very bottom just to make sure I didn't have any silly mistakes, and it looks like we did get the same answer. So I think I did it right. And this is my last example for today, so let's go ahead and work on some practice problems.